Cageside with John Morgan.
And welcome everybody back. 2025 edition of Cageside with John Morgan. It sounds crazy even just to put 2025 out there in the ether. But hey, looks like it's going to be another banging year for MMA. I'm here for it. I know the man we're about to intro in. His name is on the marquee. He's going to be here for it. So let's bring him on in. You can follow him on X, John Morgan _MMA. His name is John Morgan. What's up, pal?
Not much, man. I'm excited. Like you said, new year. I mean, it was a nice little break, right? I mean, it's a 3-week off season basically for the UFC is all we get, but that's enough for me, man. I mean, had a little break, enjoyed the holidays, spent the time with the family, and now it's time to get back to business, kind of warm things up a little slowly. Then we'll get into pay-per-view next week. So as you said, the year is just teeing up to be an awesome one, man. So I'm excited to be back. Excited to hear that you got to have one of the greatest sporting experiences of your life over the holidays, man. I had no idea that you were going to get to enjoy that. What a game it was between the University of Texas and Arizona State.
I'll tell you this. I drove from Memphis. I'm a proud Arizona State University graduate. I drove to Atlanta New Year's Eve, stayed at my cousin's, went to the game. Texas, Arizona State. I was only hoping, my wish was I want it to be competitive just going into the fourth quarter. I want Arizona State to be respectable. And then this kid named Cam Skattebo took over and made it the funnest sporting event I have ever been to. As an Arizona State fan, like watching what that kid did in big time, he backed up all the shit he talked. Man, it was a blast. And even if weren't a fan of Arizona State, if you're a Texas fan like yourself, like you have to watch this kid and just 5'0" and just taking over. He had more total yards in the fourth quarter than the Texas Longhorns.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I actually got to watch that game. I don't get to watch a lot of college football just because it's on Saturdays, right? And obviously my Saturdays are taken up with mixed martial arts fights most every weekend, so I don't get to watch a lot. But I was thinking about you as that game was unfolding because I was watching it, and I had no idea that you were actually there in attendance. But knowing that you're an ASU alum, man, they showed themselves proud. And yeah, I'd never seen Skattebo play before, and consider me a fan. You know what I mean? That guy was just fun to watch, even though I was cheering for Texas. I don't have ties to the program, but I grew up in Texas and kind of always watched the Longhorns, so I've always kind of cheered for him a little bit. But hell of a game, man. So I was really happy to hear that you got to enjoy that in person. I knew you'd at least be watching it on TV, and it was great. But to be there in person, man, I'm glad to hear you were there because that was a hell of a game.
So I caught pretty much every Arizona State game this year. I watched almost every single one. And the funny thing is this kid Cam Skattebo's been doing it all year. And no running back in college football history has ever put up the total stats that this kid did and not win the Heisman. He didn't even get invited. But my kids don't even know that it's Arizona State we're watching, because all they yell is Skattebo. So I say to my son, Ethan, you want to sit down and watch Skattebo with me? He thinks Skattebo's the name of the team because he basically was.
That's awesome. What a great story. He was, man. He was carrying the team and, man, made that entertaining. Like I said, I actually got to watch that one start to finish. Early on, I was like, oh, well, I guess this is just kind of a blowout, right?
Yeah, that start, I go, when that punt return happened, I go, not ideal. Not ideal.
Not ideal in the least, but man, Arizona State showed their character, and man, I mean, it dodged a couple of bullets in there. Texas could have easily lost that game, man. They found a way to get it done, but it was fun, man. I've actually got to watch a lot of the playoffs because there wasn't MMA during the weekend. These past couple weeks, I've actually got to watch a lot of the playoffs. It's been kind of cool to see it all unfold, and that was a heck of a game.
Arizona State coach Dillingham, 34 years old. 34.
Wow, that's crazy. He's doing something right, man. He is gonna be in demand, that's for sure.
So, well, anyways, enough about football. Let's talk MMA. Now,
let's do it.
Let's take it back a couple weeks ago when we did our Christmas wish list, right? Our Christmas wish list is, what do we want to see? What fights do we want to see? And we said that we wanted to see John Jones, and Tom Aspinall. But we also put out the caveat there that I think more of the casual fans may want to see Alex Pereira just because he's probably the bigger marketable name, right. Bow and arrow, the whole 9 yards, knocking people out, the stomp, the music entry, just the everything. So there always was that hanging out in the ether, but pretty much his manager, Alex Pereira's manager, threw cold water on that. He comes out and he says, Alex Pereira, next fight is against Ankalaev.
I like it, to be honest with you. I do think this is a fight to make. And it is interesting because, you know, a lot of times when we talk about the fights that we want to see or matches they can put together, we talk about what's going to be financially successful and what's going to draw the most eyeballs. And of course, the UFC as an organization has to think like that. They're in the business of selling pay-per-views. They're partnered with ESPN to do that. But at the end of the day, that's what they're trying to do, is fill up arenas, sell pay-per-views, generate revenue, right? But I never want to see you get too far away from giving deserving number one contenders opportunities to challenge for the title. You know what I mean? You start locking things up a little bit too long, and I think people start to question, like, what are we really doing here? You know what? Why are we not paying attention? We have these rankings. Why are we not using them? And I think Magomed Ankalaev, while he may not be the most marketable guy, and I don't think it's necessarily because of his style, because he's actually a fun fighter to watch. It's the language barrier, right? It's the cultural barrier. He's not a big, outspoken, brash guy. Obviously, he has to go through a translator for everything, and that just makes it a little bit more difficult to connect. But I think he is entertaining.
And let's be honest, like, when they position him on these fight cards, it's not even the marquee position, even though he is a marquee fighter. So it's almost, I'm not going to say cutting off your nose to spite your face, but you from an organizational aspect, you've definitely backed into this fight.
Yeah, 100%. And by the way, let's say a fight that Ankalaev absolutely has every opportunity of winning. I mean, this man could be a UFC champion very soon, and we know that he doesn't really necessarily have that star power yet. So, you know, a little bit of a risk, I guess, but that's what this is about, right? I mean, you can't map out the future. You can't, you know, draw every pattern and every path for every fighter. They've got to be tested against difficult opponents who may not necessarily be the most marketable commodities, but they're an incredibly dangerous fighter.
No, yeah, 100%. I mean, I don't know what the line is or what a potential line could be. But I think Ankalaev has got skills everywhere, and he's just a dangerous fighter. I mean, somebody who can take you down and grind you out. Like, in the reality of the situation, we haven't seen Alex Pereira against just a grinded out type fighter yet.
Yeah, and I was trying to see if there was a line on it, because I'm actually pretty curious about that. I have not seen a line either. I'm going to keep searching for it because it should be close.
Yeah, I mean, I would assume it would be, and Ankalaev, it just poses so many problems for things that, you know, really Pereira hasn't. I'm not going to say he hasn't seen yet, but he hasn't seen in waves in which it can be brought to him. You know, yeah, he was in, you know, danger of being taken down. Yes, he could be in danger of, but, you know, I mean, Israel Adesanya doesn't pose that same threat. You know what I mean? It just is what it is.
He really does. Well, I tell you what, here's what I found. This is going to be interesting. And I don't know if it's still this. This was from an article back in October 2024. So a couple months back when this was current. The line was betonline.ag, but they had Magomed Ankalaev as the favorite over at minus 140. So they actually have Ankalaev as the favorite. Alex Pereira coming back as the underdog in that matchup at plus 120. Now, again, that was a few months ago. Fight hasn't been announced, so I don't know how much really swing and change you would see, because you're not going to see, you wouldn't think, a lot of action on a fight that isn't even actually announced yet. But at least at opening was the favorite Magomed Ankalaev, and I think that's absolutely. To be honest, I do not find that shocking in the least, other than just the respect of the name value. You know what I mean? Because sometimes in these opening lines, we do see the name value. You know, they know there's some love on one side or the other, but that honestly does not surprise me at all. Ankalaev has every opportunity to win that fight.
Yeah, absolutely does. I mean, he's a guy nobody wants to fight. He's a guy who virtually is doing what he wants in these fights. Now, the disclaimer, shall it be, is he hasn't really fought in, you know, those big three kind of names up there. He hasn't had to go through them. But at the same time, you know what? This guy's ultimately deserving. He poses every risk out there, and it is a dangerous fight. And for no other reason, this guy should have been the guy, and it just he hasn't got it. It's almost kind of like a Belal Muhammad type character at this point.
Yeah, exactly. You know, the other name that came to my mind too was like Islam Makhachev during his ascension, when people were like, yeah, but who has he fought? You know, maybe even Khabib to a little bit. Khabib Nurmagomedov, where people are like, who has he fought? It's like, well, yeah, but nobody's putting their hand in the air to fight these guys, right? Because they're not the biggest superstar. So they're not necessarily people calling them out, you know, because they see the risk might not be worth the reward. You don't get as much of credit for beating him. So I think that's why he's had trouble getting some of these matchups. But you look at the names he has beat. I mean, you know, obviously he had the draw with Jan Blachowicz. Otherwise, he would be UFC champion. Fought for the title once, had that weird draw. And then since then, he's come back. He had the no contest against Johnny Walker. Came back, won that convincingly. And then, of course, Alexander Rakic as well. The only loss, I mean, you think back to the only loss. I mean, that Paul Craig loss that he had, where he was just absolutely beating Paul Craig post a pillar. I mean, it was just, and then had that insane last second throwing up submission. I mean, a legendary historical moment for Paul Craig. But other than that, I mean, this guy has just beaten everybody that's in front of him. So I like it. You know, again, I'll be interested to see what the UFC does with it. I'll be interested to see where they host the fight, you know, what position it has. I don't think you can have Alex Pereira co-headlining with anybody, unless maybe it was John Jones. But why would you put John Jones and Tom? I don't think why you put those fights in. So this has got to be a pay-per-view main event. Maybe it's
or you put it hoping that Pereira wins.
It would be amazing to have both those fights on one card. Don't get me wrong. If you were, you know, come out like International Fight Week and have that as the main and co-main, the heavyweight title, the light heavyweight title, and you hope that it goes a certain way, that you line those two up. I mean, it would be fun. But that's a lot of star power on one card. So we'll see what they do with it. It'll be interesting because, again, I do think there's bigger matchups to make in terms of fan interest and pay-per-view buys when it comes to Alex Pereira. But this, to me, is the fight to make. I believe Magomed Ankalaev is the deserving number one contender, and I'm glad to hear that it sounds like behind the scenes the UFC is leaning that way too.
Yeah. Now, I want to focus on something else that has been making headlines, you know, probably about the last 3 or 4 weeks, and it's the Global Fight League. All right?
Yes.
Now, they've been trickling out this ever-growing, like, who's who roster. Right. And I'm sure you can just read off, you know, how many, I don't know how many former UFC champions they have on there, but this roster, it's freaking ridiculous.
It's unbelievable, the names that they're putting together. If you want to check out their website, MMAGFL.com, you can see the roster they're putting together. But I mean, even like I just pulled up the heavyweight division. First of all, an old school name in Alan Belcher. Great to see him there. But you look, Alexei Olenek, Andre Arlovsky, Fabricio Verdum, Frank Mir, Junior Dos Santos, Greg Hardy, Philippe Lenz. I mean, that's just the heavyweight division. You're talking about multiple former UFC champions there. That's just one weight class. So yeah, man, what they put together and the names that they're mentioning, it's definitely making some waves. It's making some headlines, and it's getting people to stand up and take notice and say, "What? Wait, what? Who? Oh my gosh, huh?"
Now here's where the rubber meets the road. Okay, listen. I don't have anything in front of me right now, so I'm just going off of what I've read and what I have retained. Okay, but what I've read, team format.
Yes.
There's going to be 4 to 6 teams, somewhere in that range. It's going to be a team format type promotion. But what I've yet to hear, when, where, how, when, put all those adjectives in there. I haven't heard anything except we are the Global Fight League and we have these fighters. I mean, I've been a fan of MMA for 30-something years now. I've kind of heard this song and dance before, and I'm not wanting to throw cold water on it because I think this would be another great option for us fans, us pundits, a referee, right? I don't know why you could come out with all this stuff with no substance yet. I'm waiting for the substance. Do you have any substance? Tell me you have substance, John Morgan.
I wish I could, because I'm with you, I think, in that I'm a little bit concerned about, you know, how this comes together. Now, I'm optimistic. And again, I think I'm in the same boat as you, is that, like, I don't want to sit here and be negative, right? Because the more organizations that we have for athletes to compete, it's better for them. It's more opportunities for these athletes to make money. It's more opportunities for them to continue their career. It's more options in free agency for athletes to say, hey, who wants to bid on my services and potentially escalate their salary, even if they stay where they're at. It's more opportunity for us as fans to have, live events in our backyard or to go watch on TV or whatever the case may be. So the more the merrier when it comes to mixed martial arts organizations. So for that reason, it's like, come on, let's go. I want to see this. But you understand the type of money that you're talking about when you're lining up these athletes, and you don't become profitable overnight. I mean, every organization out there, you're in spend mode to begin with, and you lose money, and that's only so sustainable, right? You can only keep it going for so long. And I love the fact that all these, big name athletes are being thrown out there as being signed, but I also understand the type of paydays that they would be associated with. And I don't know, without a TV partner, as far as I know at this point, without, major sponsorship and advertising. And so, I got to imagine that from their point of view, maybe it's a little cart before the horse thing. Like, hey, let's go out there. Let's get these big names. Things like, signing Vanderlei Silva. Like, is Vanderlei actually going to fight? I don't know. A lot of these athletes, if you look at them, are a little bit on the far side of 40, right? They're a little longer in their career. I don't want to insult them by any stretch because they're legends of the game, but you wonder, will they really compete? And so I just wonder if maybe GFL is using, hey, let's go out there. Let's throw these names out there. Let's sign them to contracts. And remember, here's the interesting thing. I think they're talking about signing around like 300 athletes or so, and then only 120 of them will get drafted onto these teams for the team formats that they're going to have. So what happens to the other 180? Like, do they just go to the wayside, or are their services not utilized? So are you kind of just, hey, let's just get these names out there, let's generate headlines, and by doing that, then we can go to investors, then we can go to broadcast partners, and we can say, look at the type of social impact we're having. Look at the type of interest that is clearly in this. Don't you want to jump on board and get on board? I don't know if that's a strategy, but you're a business owner. I mean, you understand, like, that's to smart. Me it's smart. That's what it looks like to me that they're trying to do, but you still got to get those deals done.
The PFL kind of did.
Right? I mean, Don Davis talked about it this year. He actually put out a really interesting post on LinkedIn where he talked about some of the biggest failures that the PFL had this year. And he talked about like sponsorship agreements that they had at the 1 yard line that didn't quite get executed because new management came in or whatever, and just deals that fell apart that they thought they had. So, man, until that ink is dry on those contracts, and until that, bank transfer has been made and that money is your account, it's all theory and it's all hopeful. So that's where I stand with Global Fight League right now, is that I want it to do good. I want there to be options. We know that Bellator is kind of going away, right? It's kind of merged. It's all under the PFL. There's probably only going to be one organization. We know that one championship is still doing some MMA, but mostly doing more like Muay Thai, kickboxing, and submission grappling. So there's not a ton of fight opportunities there. So you need more places for people to fight and compete and to have opportunities. And I want to see it work. It's just, as you said, I don't want to pour cold water on it, but I don't see, as you said, I need to see the solid when, where, what's going, you know what I mean? And we just haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, if they were to say, hey, we have this ever-growing roster, and we have an event lined up for August 2025. That would have like almost sufficed me. And hey, more details to come, but look, we have grand aspirations. Okay, we have to crawl before we walk before we run before we sprint. I'd be like, boom, I get you. I got some substance. I know there's going to be an event in August of 25.
Yep.
But all it is trickle, roster. Oh, team format, roster. And I just, as a fan, like, I want this to happen so badly. I want it to happen so badly, but I can't even, it's going to sound lame, I can't emotionally invest in it yet.
Yeah, that's true. Well, look, like you said, it's just because you and I have been observing the sport for a long time, and we've seen this happen over and over and over. People come in, they make these big swings. Look at like Affliction and the cards they were putting together and these massive, and you knew in your head, you're like, that's not financially sustainable. Like, how can you continue to do that? And you're like, well, we've got investors. Well, the investors aren't trying to burn money. I mean, if you have people investing money, it's because they're trying to get return on their money. And I think, I get it. Like, everybody sees, man, the UFC is hot, man. This organization, man, people are paying money. Look at they're printing money over at the UFC. If we could just get a fraction of that, we'd be good to go. And I get it. But like, it takes a lot of legwork, and you've got to be capitalized, right? You've got to be capitalized to make sure that you can sustain the losses that are inevitable up top. And these seem like heavy investments. And I'll be honest with you, like the team format, okay, but that's not going to be a selling point. Like nobody is tuning in to see a team. Like now, could you start to cheer for a team? Is that a potential to start to get some gear and things that you're like, hey man, I want to support? Maybe, but I just don't think that's going to be the differentiator that a lot of people like.
Yeah, nothing about MMA says team sport to me. I mean, we have a team, a training group of people. MMA is a team sport first and foremost.
Yeah.
But from the common person, it's two people in there, it's fighting. We're not, I don't go in there saying, let's take it the UFC Ultimate Fighter back in the day, which I thought was a pretty cool format, the Black Stallions and American Top Team. That was fun, but it never got replicated again.
It never got replicated. And to me, that is honestly the only way that the team system works, is that like it's gym versus gym. Like if you tell me, hey man, we got AKA versus American Top Team or whatever, I'm like, okay, let's see. Hey, we know those deep rod. Let's see what they like. You know what I mean? If you put gyms again, Sarah Longo, they're going up against Jackson Wink. Like, okay, let's see that together. So I mean, I do think that, but it's still going to boil down to the athletes. Like if I tell you I've got those teams going against each other, but then I also tell you, oh, by the way, it's just 5 guys making their amateur debut for each one. Like, I don't know any of these people. You and I, obviously, we're ridiculous hardcores and we watch it anyway because I don't want to see who the next amateur is. But to the casual fan, the average fan, it's not going to do anything. So I don't know, man. I honestly genuinely feel bad when I talk about the GFL because I don't want to, poop on it right out of the chute. You know what I mean? Like, I want to give it an opportunity to succeed. Like you said, I want to see it, but I just see red flag after red flag after red flag where it seems like, man, we've seen this done before. Are we heading down that same path again? I hope not. So cautiously optimistic, I guess, in terms of wait and see.
How could it work? How could it work? Do you think if they built some in-house studio, did for some streaming production level down, subscription based type something? I've been, as you've been talking, I've been like, okay, can they sell out a 20,000 person arena to try and make it viable early with all these, longer in the tooth fighters or almost reach the pinnacle fighters? The answer to that is probably not. And then I start thinking, and again, this is just off the top of my head. I haven't had time to process this.
Yep.
Or could they charge a guy like me $5.99 a month? Right? Let's take, bare knuckle type strategy early on. Create this base, create me a weekly show. It doesn't have to be overly produced. It doesn't have to be, right? And now there's some sort of profit sharing between the fighters. Let's say a 50-50 profit sharing, the fighters and the organization. Now the fighters are invested to promote. The organization is invested in the fighters and to promote. Like, I think that could be a viable way, but that's just me spitballing off the top of my head.
No, I agree. And they've definitely talked about a revenue sharing model with the athletes themselves and to have them as partners. That's always a good thing, to have a fully invested partner. I do agree with you in terms of like selling out a big arena is probably not going to happen. I mean, the UFC sells tickets, but I think most people, again,
UFC.
That's it. They just know the UFC is coming to town and they're going. I mean, UFC has done such a phenomenal job of making their live events a spectacle. You know what I mean? It's going to be a show. Does it matter who's on the card? It does. Of course, that's going to be, what you want to see. But if it's coming to town, you're like, I'm going because I want to be a part of that. It's going to be.
That's why fight nights are selling out in Omaha and pay-per-views are selling out at the Garden, right? Because the people in Omaha, or let's just take Memphis, it would sell out here in Memphis because the UFC.
And I just don't think other organizations had that luxury. And so I don't think they'd sell an arena. And now you're talking about, again, okay, well, if we're going to spend a bunch of money on athletes, great. But if we're going to spend a bunch of money on production as well, like, how are we generating that revenue back? And again, sponsorships will be great, but you got to have a broadcast deal in play. It's just tough, man. It just boils down to a numbers game. I mean, as fans, like, hey, yeah, that's great. Let's put on this event. But it comes down to a number. It's a business. It's there for profit. It's not to just put on events and to lose money and to burn through it. And you need to turn a profit off this revenue. And where's the revenue stream going to come from? So to your point, I would focus more on like you said, maybe like a studio show. We're like, hey man, we've rented this building, or we've secured this, or our ownership group owns this, that we're turning into a production facility, and we're going to do all the events out of there, and you'll keep that down. Have it be, the comparison is obviously the UFC Apex, but I know like Combate Global did that for a long time down in Miami. And you just keep your production costs down, because now you're not having to ship in and ship out stuff. You're not trying to renting an arena is not cheap, man. And then just try to sell it out.
Investment.
It's a one-time. That's it, right? Whereas if you build some infrastructure, so I would definitely consider that as a possibility, because I think you're going to struggle to sell tickets. I mean, we've seen it. PFL originally talked about the fact that their business model wouldn't really entail tickets. Now they've since kind of said, no, we want to get ticket revenue, but look at the buildings they go to. They go to small buildings because they understand, like, hey man, we know we're not going to sell 10,000, but if we can get a smaller building that's more affordable for us and we can make it look good on TV, then we get the best of both worlds. So I definitely think global fight leagues are certainly looking to copy that. So I think that's one way. And as far as subscription-based services, it could, but I still think you got to get a wider broadcast contract as well. You know what I mean? That's obviously
but I'm just for that recurring. What they need early on is that recurring.
Absolutely. It'd be a possibility for sure. You know what I mean? To at least get some money locked in and to get a fan base and to get it developed. It's an uphill climb, man. It's just like any business, man. You cannot assume any business is going to be profitable from day one. It's not. So how sustainable is it? You got to make sure, again, you've got enough capital. Most people tell you make sure you at least got a year to 2 years of operating budget to try to ramp yourself up to profitability. And the MMA promotion is no business. It's no different as a business. And I just, man, these names that they're throwing out there, like awesome. But I also know that they make a lot of money, and I don't know how you earn that money back. So it's tough, man. It's tough. So are they going to be a player? Maybe. I'd love to see it come out, and all of a sudden we got a new player out there, man. We got another, major organization out there that fighters can lend their services to and can use them for bidding, and gives us more opportunities to watch fights. But it just scares me, man. It's a lot of red flags that I feel like we've seen before.
We made the comparison to the PFL. I did want to touch on the PFL. They're coming out and saying in 2025, elbows
are
now going to be allowed. So I skimmed this article. So you obviously you're really in tune with PFL.
Right.
Is it just for super fights? Is it in the tournament? Because if it's in tournament, that's a scary proposition. That's a risky proposition.
It's in tournament too, and expect more announcements coming from the PFL very soon. I've heard that maybe the regular season format is going away for them, that maybe it will be fully tournaments only, which would maybe allow them to stretch it out a little bit. But to your point, the reason that they've never allowed it to this point is that because when you're trying to get fighters to compete over and over frequently, an elbow allows for cuts, right? Lacerations and sort of things that can keep somebody out, right? Because if they suffer a terrible cut over the eye, and then yes, they win, and you're trying to get them to fight again like 4 weeks later, it's tough, right? Because that thing's just going to instantly open back up.
No athletic commission is going to regulate that.
100%. So it is risky what they're doing. They are taking a chance here, but I like the fact that they're doing it, to be honest, because it really does. It changes ground and pound when there's no elbows allowed, because it slows down the position. Because as you're well aware, if elbows aren't available and I'm on bottom and I can get wrist control, it's kind of a stalemate at that point, right? Whereas if elbows are allowed and you have wrist control, that person can still roll the arm over and top and use those elbows and change the game. So it really does change the game. Fans have been calling for it for a long time. I know Dan Hardy on the mic had been openly campaigning for it as well. And it does seem like, they're listening to the fans. And Don Davis' said, we're going to do elbows in all of it. So expect some more announcements, some more changes. I think it's a positive. Look, I know that Bellator and therefore the PFL has been getting a lot of criticism lately from fighters who are saying, look, I haven't been able to compete, and it's been very frustrating to me. Again, I think Bellator /PFL kind of made a business decision there and said, look, it doesn't behoove us talking about what we were just talking about, to go out and spend these money on these events that we don't think are set up properly right now. We need to make some changes. We need to save some resources for 2025 when we think we're going to make an even bigger push. And I think that's what they ended up doing. So I would expect some more changes. But yes, to your original question, all fights now, elbows are good to go in the PFL. No more modified rules in any of the matchups for PFL, and I like it.
I do too. Funny little story. I was giving a rules meeting for a PFL fight. I forgot what fight it was, but I was giving a rules meeting, and I was like, "All right, listen, guys." And I was given a lot of times in rules meetings, a question will be asked, and then I kind of give them like a situation. Well, the situation that this could apply in is if you're here and you're throwing an elbow, and the fighter goes, "Wait, what? Elbows? We're allowed to throw elbow?" I'm like, "No, you're not." You're not allowed to throw elbows in the PFL.
But what I was saying was, if elbows were allowed, this would be a type of situation. You don't have to worry about. That's funny. That's funny.
Because I had to catch myself. Given a rules meeting.
Well, and what's funny is that's one of the biggest reasons that I have been a proponent of trying to get everybody on board with the same unified rules, state to state. Right? It's such a challenge for the athletes, but especially the traveling referees, right? Like if you're a guy that only works in one state, fine, you just know the rules, right? But if you're a guy that travels around like yourself, like some of the other big time referees, I think it's unfair to ask them, because you get it, man. These fights happen quickly, right? I mean, they're going, and it's got to be muscle memory in your brain to know what positions you're looking for, to know what positions are illegal, to know what's allowed, what's not allowed. And to have to, for even a split second, think to yourself, wait a minute, what locale am I in? What commission am I under that I need to make that? I just think that's a horrible thing for everybody involved, to be honest with you.
And not all commissions have adopted the new downed opponent rule just yet.
I know. I wish there was a way to get everybody on board faster than it does. Just get everybody on the same page. I've heard arguments against why a national commission isn't the best scenario, that state rights or the best way to go, whatever. But it's frustrating, because when you make changes, when you don't have everybody, when the unified rules are disunified, 100%, man. So it all comes down to
those license fees and all that. But anyways, be that as it may, I think it is a good thing. Yeah. I think, in my opinion, as a fan watching, they're like, why is it elbow? I even heard in the crowd, elbow, and you're not allowed to. And like, it comes up on the screen of no this, no that, 3 5-minute rounds, blah, 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 blah. No, nobody pays attention to that ish. Absolutely. So now their fans are sitting wondering, why the heck isn't he throwing an elbow? Like, why isn't he elbowing him? And so, I mean, the great thing about MMA is it's an array of attacks from all different areas, and you have to be proficient in them all.
Yeah.
In MMA, if you take away one of those attacks, it does diminish the product a little bit. And so, for nothing else to elevate the product, you got to keep them in. And good on PFL.
Yeah, good on PFL. And like I said, it's thing that fans have been calling for. And so I like the fact that they're open to change, that they're listening to what fans are saying, they're listening to what fighters are saying, and they're making adjustments. So it's a big year. Look, like I said, I think the 2024 closed out with a lot of negativity around Bellator and therefore PFL. Their strategy of basically just not addressing it and just saying, hey, we're going to trot forward. We know what we're doing. We're going to make it right. I understand it. You know what I mean? The news cycle moves on, and it's hard to go out there and, correct every piece of information that you may feel is incorrect. And it doesn't do you any good to go out there. That's the hard part. I mean, I know that Dana White hasn't ever concerned himself with this, but overall, for most people, it doesn't do you any good to go out there and bash your fighters, right? Because you're going to need to have them later as partners, and you're going to be promoting them later on. And so I understand why they haven't necessarily done that, but this is going to be a big year for them. I feel, in talking to people behind the scenes, they feel that they're poised to make some big strides in 2025, and to kind of get away some of that feeling of negativity, and to make sure everybody's happy, and to make sure everybody's being utilized. If they can deliver on it, then I think they can take all the negative goodwill that trailed out at the end of 2024 and turn it around. So this is an early announcement for them, and expect more coming. But I like it. It is. We'll see if it backfires on them. You know what I mean? That they're running the risk of this causing some issues. As I said, my understanding is the regular season's going away, and so it'll just be tournaments. I don't know if that's official yet. I know they haven't commented on it. I don't know if they've fully decided that, but I think that's been a discussion point. If so, I think that would at least allow you to spread the fights out a little bit more, so you have a little bit more time in between each fight, that if you did have a nasty cut, something like that, it could heal. But we shall see. I hope it works out. I like I said, I like it, but there is risk associated with it as well.
Yes, there is. Now, you said there was some ill will in PFL and Bellator, but Bellator is back in the headlines, and it's back in the headlines right now because the GOAT, Khabib Nurmagomedov, ahead of a Usman Nurmagomedov-Paul Hughes fight, is always going to take a shot, whether it be directly at Conor McGregor or subvertly at Conor McGregor. He is going to take that opportunity, and he did it again just recently, where I'm going to paraphrase it. He gives an interview and he says, let's be honest. And the nonchalantness is where I get, let's be honest. You know, what has what has Ireland MMA really produced? Two people, Conor McGregor and maybe Paul Hughes, right? And he's like, Dagestan MMA is ranked in every weight class, in every major promotion. It's not even comparable. They're not even half of what Dagestan MMA is. I honestly think you can go out there and you can say, well, yeah, he's right. Because Dagestan is that special when it comes to MMA. But it's still ruffling some feathers. Conor McGregor goes on a tweet and delete spree. Paul Hughes comes out, starts calling them cheaters and PED users and things of that nature. But am I excited even more now to watch a Bellator Championship Series fight between Usman Nurmagomedov and Paul Hughes, who, by the way, let's not discredit what this man just did, coming off of beating AJ McKee, Usman Nurmagomedov, the lightweight champion of the world. Am I even more excited to see this damn fight? Hell yes. In my opinion, this is one of the most exciting fights you can make in 2025, and we're getting to see it very, very early. And oh yeah, the GOAT Conor McGregor is putting layers and layers and layers and layers on top of it. Sign me up.
I'm telling you what, man, this has reignited a rivalry, and let's hope Bellator/PFL can build off this, because all the groundwork has been laid for them. I would say, by the way, and I don't think Khabib meant this as any slight. I think if you did say, well, hold on, what about Ian Machado Gary? He's out there right now too. You'd be like, okay, well, my bad. I probably forgot that name. I should have thrown that in there. But I mean, you can't deny like the level of Dagestani fighters. But I mean, it's like their national sport. You know what I mean? It's like the level of participation is unbelievable, and it wasn't even legal in Ireland until like very recently. And it's been difficult. It's been tough sledding for those over in Ireland. So to even be represented the way they are with the size of the population they have, it's pretty damn incredible. So you can argue all those things however you like, but the bottom line is, the great part about it is it's not just theoretical conversation. It's all building up to a fight that's about to happen. As you said, Paul Hughes, not getting the training wheels treatment, right? They're just saying, let's go. You're in. We're putting you in the big fights right away. So I love it. And man, as much as I disliked the build up to Conor McGregor versus Khabib Nurmagomedov, because I just absolutely hated, to be honest with you, I hated that event, man. Just the build up to it, the darkness of it. I didn't like it. It was just, it had so much negative energy around it. I mean, obviously it was a huge event, and it was, cool to be a part of, and it was amazing to see, but it was just so much negative energy around it. But now to have a continuation of that and to have like the next generation of that, and to build on a rivalry that's maybe not quite as dark in the build up to it, man, this could be pretty incredible, and it's a great fight. So I love the fact that, again, let's not waste time. We got these big names. We got some buzz behind them. Let's put them together. This is one of the biggest matchups we can make in the organization right now. Let's do it. I love the fact that they went ahead and did it. And yeah, there's going to be some flavor building up to this one.
We know how good Usman is, right? Or at least we think we know. We don't know who's the best lightweight in the world. A lot of times we say, could it be Usman? Is it Islam? Only they know the answer to that question. Only Uncle Khabib knows the answer to that question. We didn't know much about this Paul Hughes guy going into AJ McKee. We know a lot about AJ McKee, and let's not discredit that guy. So for Paul Hughes to get a split decision over AJ McKee says this guy is at the elite of this sport. I forgot what his record is, 13-1, something like that. I think Usman is
spot on, 13-1 against 18-0.
18-0. Do we have an early line? Do we have a line on that fight yet?
Ooh, good question. Let's see if we got that one.
I mean, while you're doing that, I just think AJ McKee is that special of an athlete. Like, I know Pitbull beat him, right? And I know this, but he is that special of an athlete that over the course of multiple rounds, like if you're hanging with him and you're beating him and you beat him in a split decision, you are a special fighter.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any early lines on that right now. I know, with Bellator and PFL, sometimes it's a little close to the fight. UFC, they usually get out a little bit. And I think it's honestly because a lot of the fighters just aren't as known. We haven't seen as much of a track record. But I think you're spot on with this. I am a huge fan of AJ McKee. It just as a fighter, I just think he's phenomenal. So that win, I mean, it spoke volumes about how good Paul Hughes is. Now, we had seen him competing in Cage Warriors, but again, you just never know. You know what I mean? That's the developmental stage, and obviously it's been one of Europe's top pipeline, and Cage Warriors has a history of producing numerous, not only top talents, but UFC champions that have come out of the organization. So Cage Warriors is a wonderful testing ground. But there is just a little bit level up, right? And to come out of the gate swinging like that, the way that Paul Hughes did, and for them to put him against AJ McKee in just his second fight with the organization and to get a victory there is huge. And yes, against Usman Nurmagomedov, man, we're going to find out about this. And like I said, I think there's going to be some flavor in the build up to it too. So that is something to look forward to later this month for sure. That's one of the biggest fights that's lined up. Obviously, we've got the return of the UFC this week, and obviously next week, a massive pay-per-view, and a lot of the biggest fights of this month are going to be on that big UFC pay-per-view event. But this Road to Dubai Champions Series later this month, man, that's going to be a heck of a fight. One that definitely deserves everybody's attention in the MMA world.
And we will talk about it the more it comes. It's like, truth be told, like I got to go do more research on Paul Hughes. I just do.
Understandable.
I haven't been able to see the body of work, but when I look at it, a lot of times when you look at the Fight Finder, right, and you see, win, decision, TKO, knockout, decision, knockout, AJ McKee, victory. Holy smokes, this dude must be legit.
He's definitely legit. And it's understandable. I mean, unless your job is a full-time mixed martial arts reporter, and that's all, it's hard. I mean, because there are great athletes developing everywhere. You know what I mean? It's hard to see everything, especially when the UFC just takes up such market share. I mean, they've got events every single week, so it's difficult. But Paul Hughes is definitely one to keep an eye on. And whether this is his moment or not, he's going to be a guy that's around for a while. Paul Hughes is going to be a name that, can he, establish himself as one of the all-time Irish greats? We'll see. But at 27 years old, I mean, he's just, he's right in his athletic prime. That's when you really start to see guys start to shine. I think Usman Nurmagomedov a little bit younger at 26. But again, you talk about the training room and the reputation and what he has. This is a hell of a fight. And I think, it's not necessarily the end if Paul Hughes comes up short. But man, if he is victorious, holy cow, what a step forward this would be in his career. And just an immediate
lock him up long term.
100%, right? Build around that guy. And again, we'll see what Bellator does as well. I mean, we know that the PFL, kind of the Bellator name is going away in 25. So this is the Road to Dubai Champion Series. Like, I don't even think but it's for the Bellator title. They got some things they got to work out to figure all that out. But basically, it's all going to be under one umbrella.
But is there going to be another Bellator event even?
I don't think so. And so how do you keep defending Bellator belts under non-belt? Like, I don't get it. So they got some logistics to figure out and how to make this happen. But usually you just make it a super fight belt or whatever, whatever you want to call it. But this is somebody that can build around. And again, and I've said it from the beginning and I'll continue to say it, I think one of the smartest things that PFL has done is establishing those international leagues, man. I think that's the big deliver primetime entertainment with local talent in these organizations around the world, right? I mean, if you're a European fight fan, God bless you, because you're staying up till 5 o'clock in the morning to watch UFC fights. And that is it's just
even in your hometown, you're going to the event.
Even when you're there live in your hometown, you're going there at 5 a.m. That's hard to do. So, man, when you can have an organization come through and be like, hey, man, we've got some of your local upcoming talent, and now that we're going to put it on TV for you at 7 p.m. on a Friday night so you can watch it, man. I mean, I love that. So, guys like this, international stars, man, building around them, taking to events there, like this is big. So, again, this is no easy task for Paul Hughes. Usman Nurmagomedov is legit, but man, if he can win this, or at the very least, just be competitive. And again, you said it, the win over AJ McKee shows that he absolutely is deserving of the spot. It's a big moment for him for sure.
And what makes Usman just so special is, obviously he's got the name behind him, which then by default means his grappling is going to be absolutely spectacular. But this dude is stand up. He's like out of that Eagle MMA, I think he's risen above everybody with that just dynamic stand up game too. And so it's like, pick your poison with this kid.
I agree, man. He's so incredibly well rounded and so talented. And then you just talk about, that camp, the work ethic that they all have, and just, part of that is cultural, whatever. Like, their idea of an off day is like going and playing Dagestani basketball or whatever. Like it's going to be based around some athletic form of competition, even, on their rest days or on their parties.
Yeah, 6-mile run in the morning, followed by fasting till noon, followed by pure protein, and then we're going to go play 12 pickup games of soccer.
That's a day off. Like, thank God we don't have to train today. We're just going to do that because that's fun. You know what I mean? And you think about like Khabib back in the day, you think about like the after party or whatever. His after party was always like, oh, I'm going to get a cheeseburger and a Coke with ice. Like,
I just want Coke with ice. I'm like, dude, give me pizza, booze, women, yeah, after party. I'm gonna be shirt off, swinging, Coke with ice.
Coke with ice. It is a cheeseburger with 2 cheese, not 2 meat, just 2 cheese. A double cheeseburger, but not double meat, just double cheese. Oh man, that's the type of dedication they have. So this is a great fight, man. And listen, I think everybody kind of took the holidays off, right? Understandably so. And I'm talking about these promotions as well. Like that, you didn't hear a lot of noise because we're only a few weeks away, but you didn't hear a lot from anybody because listen, there's so much going on. You got all the college football games happening. You've got the holidays. Your employees just want to have some time, to spend with their families and to not promote and that sort of thing. But now, we're back, right? Just like us. We took a little week off, enjoy the holidays, but we're back. It's the start of 2025. And PFL/Bellator, man, they got to get on this because this is a big fight. And I don't think they can afford to just let this thing go by and not get the attention it deserves, man, because you've got potentially the best lightweight on the planet. You got potentially the next superstar at the organization. You can't let this thing go by quietly and people not hear about it on the way because this is a big fight for you.
Khabib's doing his job.
He's done. He's doing the job. He's fired it up, man. It's brilliant when you think about it. How tactical it was in thought, but now you got the biggest combat sports star on the planet, Conor McGregor, talking about your organization and your event that he has absolutely nothing to do with whatsoever. But Conor ain't gonna let it slide. Like that's never gonna happen. He's not gonna let it slide. So it was kind of easy pickings. They're like, hey, let's just jab the guy, and I bet he'll start talking about our fight.
Yeah. So, well. With that being said, we are 2 weeks away. Look, we're going to save the breakdown for next week, but we're starting 2025 off with a juggernaut. A juggernaut. Arman Tsarukyan, Islam Makhachev, Dose. Let's go back. Arman's debut into the UFC.
Unbelievable.
Split decision?
Unanimous decision. But he did win one round.
All right. Versus Islam, who's gone on to be, who many say is the number 1 pound for pound fighter in the sport right now. And then all Arman has done is look flawless since. Even beating Charles Oliveira in his last fight. And you know what we think about Charles Oliveira on this show. This is a banger to start 25.
It is an incredible fight. Their first fight, you got to look back. As you said, number 1, Arman's making his debut, right? UFC debuts are tough. And everybody will tell you leading into it, no, it's just another fight for me. I don't feel those nerves. And to a man and a woman afterwards, they will tell you afterwards, nah, man, it was different. Like, I was feeling different. I
can tell you what it was like reffing the first time.
Right? Yeah. You're like, I'm just doing the same job I always do. No, you're not. It's different here. He was 22 at the time. 22 at the time. If you can believe that. So young, making his debut. And if you go back and watch that fight, and I remember watching that fight live because at the time I was doing a piece for MMA Junkie where I would give like prospect analysis of people after they made their UFC debut. And I was like, man, after watching Tsarukyan's debut, I'm like, hey, this dude is going to be around. This dude's going to be a problem for anybody in the division. And it was one of those fights when you go back and watch it where it was clear Islam won, right? There was you knew who won, but it was 30-27 on 2 cards. It was 29-28 on 1 card, and that judge gave him round 2. I actually personally had it 29-28. I gave him round 1. So you see how close it was, right? I mean, you're talking about very, very close rounds along the way. They're incredibly well matched. Styles make fights. They're both incredible athletes. They're both incredible fighters. But stylistically, the way they pair up, it's really, really good. And since then, since that first meeting at 22 years old, Islam Makhachev has just gone 9-0 and claimed the belt. And Arman, as you said, he's gone 9-1. Controversial loss there to Metal Skamrot. A lot of people scored it the other way. So, I mean, they have built back to this moment, and it is a hell of a main event for the first fight of 2025. And, oh, by the way, the co-main event is just as good. You know what I mean? Like, I am so excited for this card. I'll actually be I'll be in LA. I'm excited to see the Intuit Dome. We'll talk about it all next week, obviously. But, yeah, I'm excited to see that new venue, right? I mean, obviously, everybody's saying what a technological marvel this thing is. So I'm excited to see that. But, the venue is awesome, and I'm excited for it. But it's these 2 title fights, man. I just don't think you could have asked for 2 better matched, more high-level fights. And especially for me and you as fans of grappling the way they are, the way these 2 fights in the main and co-main event, of course, co-main event, Merab Dvalishvili and Umar Nurmagomedov. So a lot of Nurmagomedovs in action.
We'll get into that next week.
Unbelievable. Some great fights. So, I'm looking forward to it.
And before we get out of here, we're wrapping things up. But before we get out of here, I don't know if it's just me, but do you get some Ilya Topuria vibes out of Arman Tsarukyan? Like like the vibes are the same, like the confidence, just the polishedness. It's like I just get those vibes. It's like we've got the guy here, like he's here. Yeah. I get those vibes from him.
No, 100%. It's young, swag, confidence. You know what I mean? And oh, by the way, the skills to back it up, right? So it's not like just some, hey man, who's this punk talking trash I've never heard of? Like, no, this dude can fight, man. And so I hadn't thought about it, but as soon as you said it, absolutely. I think it's just youth, style, swagger, confidence, and skills, man. It's all there. So this is a hell of a fight, man. This is a hell of a fight because, again, it was a great fight the first time around. It was fight of the night that night. Again, Islam, you knew he won, but he got everything that he wanted in Arman Tsarukyan, and now Arman has only gotten better. He's, Islam as well. So it is a great fight, man. I'm looking forward to next week in LA for sure.
Let's go. I'm ready for it too. Well, this was a fun episode. We really talked about nothing in particular, but we previewed a very early portion of 2025. And I think it's just amazing. The sport is just growing and growing and growing and growing. And when you think it can't grow anymore, we're talking about how it's going to grow some more.
It's going to be a big year, man.
I almost love to say we were early investors into it. You know what I mean? And I love that. I love everybody coming on board, but just bright days ahead for all these promotions. Hopefully Bellator and PFL get it figured out.
Yeah, I think they will. Look, I feel confident about it. Again, I've talked to people behind the scenes. I think they know what they want to do, and they've got plans in motion. I kind of wish they would have talked about it a little bit more publicly because I feel like they're taking a hit right now. But I think they've got plans for a big 2025. The UFC is a juggernaut. You know what I mean? Like, they're going to continue on, and they're coming out the gate strong. Didn't even talk about it. Obviously, should mention this weekend, by the way, the UFC Apex. There is a fight night, so they're getting back, but the headlines are all around the pay-per-view. You got Mackenzie Dern and Amanda Hebus this weekend on Saturday. I'll definitely be in the building for that. But the UFC is a juggernaut. They're going to continue on. And again, this Global Fight League, man, I hope they can get it done. Exactly, man. Fingers crossed, right? Like, we want to see more organizations, more opportunities. It's just it's a big undertaking, but I do think this is going to be a big year for the sport of mixed martial arts. As always, it just every year continues to get bigger and bigger, man, which is fortunate for us, man. I love it. Bigger for CFFC as well, baby. We got all that. On top of it, I've got so much stuff coming. I'm so excited, man. Like I said, Apex this weekend, LA the following weekend. then 3 college wrestling dates. CFFC MMA returns on February 1st in Philadelphia. We got more college wrestling after that. I mean,
what about Sean Brady dispatching the boogeyman like he did?
Oh, if you didn't get a chance to watch Fury Professional Grappling on UFC Fight Pass, check it out. There were some great matchups, and you're right, man. I was so intrigued by that matchup and the way Brady beat him, man. It played out exactly like you thought. Yeah, mounted guillotine. But the way he set it up was slick too. He was kind of in like that, modified side control half guard. He's attacking the arm. And as he's setting up the arm, he just reaches back and locks up the neck instead, and then steps over and sits on that guillotine. Great mounted, great, beautiful trap, beautiful setup. Beautiful technique, man. It was
I would say if you can grab a chin strap, you can finish a guillotine, and that is exactly what he did. And a lot of times from those positions, you're not worried about your neck because it's only grabbed here, and then you have somebody who can get that clamp down and that can really execute. It's funny. We actually went over it this morning on my 5:30. Not that exact, but where you can grab all these guillotines from. And that's what Brady did, and it's spectacular, and it's very underutilized. It's non-threatening until it is tremendously threatening.
That was it, man. He's got a great one. And Richie Martinez, man, just such a classy dude, just a veteran grappler, and nothing but praise for him. And it was funny because, dude, even that, like right before that, he had the arm and got slammed out of that. I mean, it was just a really good grappling match between those two. So it was a heck of a main event. Pat Downey as well.
Pat Downey continues his run.
Pat Downey is fun, man. That guy does not mind playing the heel. Is very open and honest about where he stands.
Yeah, but he's a blue belt.
Yeah. Well, purple now. He got the purple. He's a purple now. Yeah, I think he'll be brown very soon. I think he'll be flying through these belt colors. But yeah, man. But he's fun, man. He just makes entertainment, right? He gets it. Like, hey, there's a show to this as well. You know what I mean? So it was the first time I'd ever had a chance to work with Pat Downey, and man, he brought it. I know Andre Petrosky was super frustrated because it was a battle of alpha male wrestlers, and he lost on and it was a great overtime takedown too, where it's like Petrosky nearly had the takedown, and Downey countered, wrapped his hand.
He was in deep, and then Downey got that underhook and just turned the corner and just said, and he almost just big boyed him at that point. Bam!
That's it. I think that's why Andre was so frustrated. He's like, damn, I kind of just got out muscled by this guy. But as Pat Downey said, if I get my hands locked around, you're going to the ground. So he's great. I hope we see more Pat Downey, man. He was fun. Man, Joe Pyfer looked great. And then how about that? Joe Pyfer. And it was funny because I knew what fight was coming at that point. He had booked the Kelvin Gastelum fight, but a great win for him. But, man, how about him and Kelvin Gastelum in Mexico City, man? That is a phenomenal fight, man. I think that could be fantastic, man. Those could be great. And then Pat Sabatini looked good. So, yeah, check that replay on Fight Pass if you missed it, man. It was a lot of really, really good performances at Fury Professional Grappling 12. So,
well, with that being said, for John Morgan, I'm Eric McMahon. We'll see you next week, and enjoy the fights.